All right, let's jump into it. So the first topic we're going to jump into today is our client hub. And you may or may not notice this little icon over here on the left-hand nav called Client Hub. Do note this is for premium and industry advantage licensing. So if you don't see it, that could be the cause. But also, since this is in beta right now, you do have to enable it in your admin settings. So if you come down to settings down here, and you'll go into admin settings. And of course, if you don't see admin settings, you might not be an administrator within your instance. You may want to reach out to your IT team to be able to enable that so you could trial this. But go jump into admin settings, and then you'll see client hub management, and then the client hub access, and then you'll see the enable toggle here. You can also set up trial mode and you can add certain people to allow them to test out Client Hub. So that's another option that you can enable here. And then we also have custom fields. We'll jump back into this a little after I kind of demonstrate what Client Hub actually is. So let's come back over to it. So Client Hub is a way for you to be able to tag or link different assets within ShareFile to a particular entity. And that entity typically can be, say, a company or a direct client that you actually are working with. And as you can see, we have those, or at least a bunch of these are already created for us. But as you can see, we can actually create either individual clients from here or company entities. And I'm going to demonstrate that because I think this is a great way to help organize client users within ShareFile. And you might ask yourself, well, what does it have to do with security? Well, I believe, first off, if you're looking to report and kind of keep track of what clients have access to within ShareFile, this is a great method to start adding clients this way and attaching them to entities like a company so that it's easier to link certain assets within ShareFile for better tracking purposes. So let's demonstrate how that kind of works. And by the way, this can actually really take over when you add a client. If you're used to adding clients under the People tab and your Browse Client Contacts, you could come directly into the Client Hub and create client contacts this way, which again is a better method to put them under a company so that I know that they belong to a company that I'm working with. So first off, we're going to create a client up at the top here. And as I said, we can go ahead and create a new client just like you're used to. Of course, we need a first name, last name, and email address. We also have the ability to set a client ID. This is basically a visual aid for you to be able to track this entity. It can be great for, say, if you're in the legal space, you can actually set a case matter, or if you're in accounting, maybe perhaps you have a particular ID associated with one of your clients. Just an easier form to be able to track that client within ShareFile. And then you also have an internal display name. So that can be used for, as you could see, visually representing something when it deals with internal employees like yourself, like I'm doing now in setting it up. Now I can also add existing users. And as you can see, I could start typing and we're going to actually add Mr. John Smith here just to demonstrate. But first, before we exit out of here, as you can see, I can also create a company name. And that's where you'll see these little building icons that will represent a company or entity that the client belongs to. And then same thing here, we can actually create a new contact or a client, or we can add an existing. Now, as you can see, this is for your primary contact. So we label that so that there is somebody that necessarily is, say, the person we're typically always contacting within the company. So you can change the primary contact as you will. So it's not set in stone. But again, you kind of have to kick it off and set a primary contact into the company. Well, let's demonstrate with a couple assets that we already have set up here. And I'm going to add an existing client that I've already created. So again, you can jump right into this. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. If you already have a list of your clients that you've already added, you could start typing in their name. like I showed you. I want to add John Smith here. And then let's just, for representation, I want to add a client ID, and then I can add. So then this creates my client contact. And as you could see, of course, you can kind of go through the wizard to link assets that are already existing. So you can browse folders. So if you have a folder that you want to associate with John Smith, you could do that now. But we're just going to first associate them with a company. So what I'm going to do is come back to my client hub. And I'm going to say that John Smith is an employee of GloboGym. So I'm going to add that contact directly to GloboGym. And first I'm going to do is look at the contacts that already exist. And as you can see, my friend Bruno here, he's a primary contact. So he's a part of GloboGym as well. But I want to add John Smith under here. So same deal is I can bring in John Smith, the one I've already added. And now he's part of GloboGym as the company. So again, kind of starting to visualize here that you can have that hierarchy where I'm going to be able to go into GloboGym and see all the client contacts that are associated with GloboGym. So when I'm going through auditing and reporting, I have a 360 view of who is under GloboGym. So if I'm working with GloboGym, I know who to reach out to and I know what assets they have access to. Now let's go to that part. As you can see up here, you have a Files tab. And as you can see, there's nothing associated with GloboGym right now, but we can link folders. And let me just make this clear. I'm not giving permission for Bruno or myself or John Smith to be able to access that folder. This is simply linking that folder that could be already existing within ShareFile to basically show that there's some linkage between GloboGym and say, for instance, here I have a client folder and say, for instance, I have John's test folder here, and then I can add. And now I can see that GloboGym has some association with, of course, this John's test folder. And if I wanted to, I can jump in directly to see what files are accessible from here. So it really kind of gives you that visual aid of associating that folder with GloboGym. Obviously, if they aren't already added to that folder, you can always go to the folder section, your shared folders, navigate to John's folder, or search it, and then you can add them directly there so they have access. But again, this is more of just a visual aid for me. Now, also, we do have projects. Projects is a premium offering as well. It's a containerized way to work with our clients. But for this example, again, I want to link a particular project with GloboGym because John Smith may be already added to a project and working on something with, say, an employee of mine. And again, it has to do with GloboGym. So now I can always kick off a new project if I wanted to from here, which is a great way of, again, just kind of going down that path of asserting that I'm working with GloboGym on this new project and I can create one from here. But if I go to the project section, you'll see there's a link to client. Now, as you can see, it's already suggesting a couple things because John Smith's already been added to this project. So it's giving me a couple different assets here that he might be a part of, and maybe he's a part of another entity. But for this one, you could start typing in, oops, sorry, GloboGym, and we can link the client to that. And there we go. So now we have, again, a linked asset here. So when we go back to our client hub and go into my GloboGym, as you could see in my overview now, I see that I have document requests and a questionnaire that John Smith is associated with, and there are different tasks that are being required here. And I could go back over to projects here, and I could see that John Smith is a part of this one, and I could just kind of jump in if I wanted to see what's happening here. So again, as a security measure, this is a great way just to jump in, be able to see what's going on in this project and assure they are handling it the way they are. And also, it really gives nice assurance that if I come back over to GloboGym I get a nice overview to see that they're going through some document requests and some information requests, like a questionnaire that John Smith needs to complete. So it really kind of sets in the pace of being able to track those assets in a one easily a configurable dashboard that you can either add existing client contacts, add new ones, and put them under a company like GloboGym. So this way I'm not kind of scattered around trying to look for what John Smith has access to. I can go to one central place, onboard GloboGym, being able to add John Smith because he's a part of GloboGym, and then go ahead and link all the different assets that he may be, of course, already working on with, say, my employee. So again, just a great overview to be able to really be secure of mind that they do have the right different assets they're working on, and really kind of gives a peace of mind when you're going through an audit and making sure we have all the assets and are aware of those assets that they're working. So more ours to come with Client Hub, kind of just going back over to the admin settings. One thing I did promise I would come back to is custom fields. As you can see, we can create different custom fields with our Client Hub here. And this really says if I needed to add a data ID, say for the client. So I'm tracking maybe an ID that I have on another document management system. I can set a custom field and I could do the field type, like if it's a drop down question, and I can add different options to it. So again, when I'm adding that stuff in there, that is attached to the client when I'm adding them or onboarding them. As you can see, I can just attach this to all clients, or it could be based on the company or the individual. So another way to kind of track, of course, if you're going through ShareFile and there's certain assets you need to track with that client, you can add those different fields. So it's another way of being able to audit. All right, let's jump into our other topic here. And that is a bit of sharing. I want to just hit on some patterns that we, of course, see on our side that are super important that I feel you should know to make things a lot more secure when you're sharing data within ShareFile. So let's jump into, say, one of our folders, and we're about to share something out. And I just kind of want to go over what all that you have available to you when you're sharing something. So let's come into our client folders here. And as you can see, I want to come in and share this one document. As you can see, it has maybe some PII in it. By the way, I can always right click on it to get to my shortcuts, or you have a share button here. So a couple different easy shortcuts for you to jump into. And what this is actually doing is actually, I'll come back to this in a minute. It's analyzing to understand if there is something in this document that is PII related, which it is. But I'm going to come back to it because I will show you a couple different advantages that we have with securing PII. Now, first off, when we're about to share, we can come in and edit this link and change up some of these options. Now, you're probably used to this already. Let's say, for instance, for this share, I want to choose to have that person view. I want anyone to access it, which is a little unsecure, right? It's you're just sending this out to the public, and anyone can actually access it. So maybe I'll require them to sign in. As you can see, that little warning at the top went because those are warnings that we're always kind of prompting the user to be sure they understand that this might be an unsecure link. But then we can also set the expiration, how long that link lasts. We can always be sure that we are using the latest version because we do have versioning within ShareFile. And then we also have watermarking and notifying me when the link is accessed. So I'll get an email when somebody accesses this share, which is great. I think that's a great security measure you should always have checked because then you can know when somebody accessed it and get a little bit of an audit trail. One thing I wanted to show you is that we can add a watermark here and we can create that copy of the share out. Now, I did want to show you the watermarking capability that we have. And I'm just going to copy this. And I'm going to prepare this on the side, like I'm sending it to a client. But before I do, I wanted to jump back out and show you there are watermarking settings that you can take advantage of. Again, you do need to be an administrator to change those watermarking settings. So if you go under settings, admin settings, advanced preferences, and then file settings, we're going to jump down over to the watermarking section. Now, as you can see, we can enable it, which is usually on by default, and we could set up different dynamic text based on who you're sending it to be able to review that data. So it is a great way to kind of set this up to give a nice little presence over the document you're sending over to the client. And it'll give a nice advantage that if, say, somebody's looking over your shoulder, or somebody takes a snapshot of that file you're viewing, they'll be able to see that watermark in the picture and be able to track it back. And to that extent, I wanted to bring this over and show you what that looks like. So I took that link and I opened it over here, and this is my client view. And as you can see, I have my overview here. This is for John Smith, I sent it to. This is originating from my IP address here, gives the date, and then who it's destined to go to, which is my client, John Smith. So again, gives a nice little extra layer of who I'm actually sending it to. In case somebody takes a snapshot, you have some evidence on the background if it's a view-only document. Now, while I'm here, the one other thing I wanted to touch on are your share and request settings. As you can see, when I went in to create a share, I had the ability to set this to anonymous, meaning I can send that share and anyone can open it up. But make your discretion here in terms of how you want your users to send things out. Now, if we want to be more secure, we would take out these anonymous options. And by the way, the second anonymous option will still be anonymous, but we do require them to put in a name and email address. So that's one way to help, of course, curb a little bit of that anonymous option. So you could just take out that one anonymous option. But these last two have the ability to require people to sign in. So that requires them to have that client account and for them to log in before they can view that document I just showed you. And then furthermore, you can default certain permissions. So if you did have anonymous sharing enabled, what you could do is default it always to client contacts and employee users after signing in can view that document I shared. So if a user just wanted to really quickly share something and didn't go into the edit options like I showed you, it will default over to requiring them to sign in. But if you wanted to give them the option of anonymous, as you can see, that will show up still when you're sharing, but it will default to this sharing unless they go in and change it to anonymous. And then also you could set a maximum expiration period. So if I set this to 6 months, the user wouldn't be able to choose an expiration anything from anything under 6 months. So it's a great way so that a link says it's not ever going to expire out in the wild. So we do differentiate these settings from either share settings or when we're requesting files from users. So we did break that up in case you wanted two different experiences when you're working with a client. Also, while I'm here, I did want to show you that share recommender that we have. That is the option where it will warn you if, say, I'm sharing something and it detects PII in that file, and it's going to warn you that you are sharing PII and you have it, say, set on anonymous. It will give a warning to the user to probably think twice about the security of that link itself. So kind of going back over to that originating folder, if I shared that out, say for instance, I came back in here. Oh, and by the way, I'm just going to do download here. Oh, I'm taking my watermark off. I set this to anonymous. As you could see here, now it's warning me that I'm sending this out very unsecure. And of course, you can view the details of what it found in the file and then apply recommended settings. And you'll see the recommended settings here by the tag. So that is an AI setting. As you saw in my previous note there, it is a toggle for AI settings. If you didn't want that enabled, you can turn that off. But I do feel this is a great measure for your users to kind of think twice when they're sending out more sensitive documentation. Now, to wrap my side up, the last thing I wanted to talk about is sharing. You need to have an extra layer of security, you can also encrypt emails via through your ShareFile instance. So if I took, say, this file here and I needed to share it, maybe I'm using now the email option instead of just creating a link. I can come in here and toggle the encrypt email option. So let's just take John Smith for an example. I'm just going to send John Smith an email here. Now, your data at rest and in transit is already encrypted, but what this does, it allows you to encrypt a message. So I could say, hey, maybe there's client information in here that I didn't want to expose just to anybody, but once I send this over to John Smith, there it goes. We can go into his mailbox, and I'll bring that over now. As you can see, now it's encrypted. So if we actually click on that link, I'm already logged in with my client account. But as you can see, it will actually now decrypt that message within a web session. So then now I have the ability to simply download. But the nice thing here is I can continue that encryption session. And when I reply, I can encrypt my own message back and attach my own files, say if I needed to send him something back. So this is a really nice way to just add a little extra layer when you're dealing with email functionality within ShareFile. And one little small point also, of course, the functionality also is in our Outlook plugin functionality. If you're not used to our Outlook plugin, it's a great tool. I recommend it for anyone that's using Outlook. We do also have one for Gmail. But as you can see here, I'm just going to send one over to my test account. And I'm just going to take a file here. And let me just grab a super quick document. Here's my test. There's a CSV file, it's a report. Now, same thing here with my Outlook plugin, it'll convert it over to my share. But then if you come up at the top right here, depending on how large your ribbon is, you may see it or may extend off, but usually you'll see the three dots here. You can turn on encryption. As you can see now, the encryption is on. But once I send this share over to John, it will do the same thing like I just showed you through the web UI, where then that client user would need to click on the link and they would have to log in to be able to decrypt the message if, say, now I'm putting in a message here into my body. So again, great, easy way, very easy tool. Just on a side note, with the Outlook plugin, if you haven't used it yet, you can always jump into it by coming into your app section, and then you'll see the share file for Outlook. So I highly recommend this. As you can see, we encrypt email messages. So obviously, when security is in mind, those things are super important to be sent over, and you need to encrypt certain message in the body. This is the way to go. By the way, if you don't see the encryption option, that is another setting under admin settings, under email settings, and then down below, you'll see the enable encrypted email. This should be on by default, but just wanted to show it in case you didn't see the encryption option or your users complained about it. It's something just to be sure to check that it's there and enabled for you. But that's my time. I'm going to pass it now over to Bruno, and Bruno is going to finish up our webinar for today. Bruno?
Thanks, John. So let's keep it rolling. So John showed us how to create a specific instance of sharing data with another individual or group of individuals by creating a link with its own specific parameters for password requirements, um, expiry parameters, whether someone can download a copy of the file or just view it via this link, etc. That's one method of sharing. That's what we call a share. However, ShareFile is also a repository of files that can be stored long term, not just passed out via links. And there are plenty of scenarios where it may benefit you to actually add another user, internal to your company or external, one of your clients, partners, vendors, etc., to a folder for ongoing work. So what does that look like? Let's take a look. First off, I'm going to click into my Folders tab. The purpose of our exercises, we'll just look through shared folders. So what we can do here is pick really any folder, and simply by clicking on the People tab, we can see a list of users on this folder. That includes uh, super users and global administrators, as well as distribution groups. Like here we have our Acme IT team. And so that's one object that I can treat as just one person, assign this object to folders with given permissions, and this distribution group can actually hold up to 2,000 people. So just by adding a group and changing their permissions, I can actually disseminate this information to up to 2,000 people at once, or update the rights of up to 2,000 people in one fell swoop. So distribution groups can be very powerful. And those of us from the Active Directory, the Microsoft world, we may think of security groups and organizational units, which are a pretty good parallel. However, um, distribution groups in ShareFile can actually include external users as well. So you can create a group of all of your clients, a group of certain types of clients that need to share common information. You can really organize that however you want. Clients that work for a particular company. So you've got external users, maybe at a partner firm that you're working with for a given engagement. You can assign and manage rights for everyone that needs to be treated the same way in one fell swoop. Looking back over these folder permissions, you'll notice that they are granular, and we've got a pretty simple matrix here. So if I want to go to our co-host, John, and enable alerts on this Acme construction folder for every time a file is downloaded, all I have to do is click here, and he'll receive a notification anytime someone downloads a file from this folder. I can also cascade that down to any subfolders contained therein by checking the Apply Permissions to Subfolders box. Don't forget to hit Save. But the concept is the same across these various types of permissions. So we can assign some, very few, all, or however we need to mix and match the level of permission. We've got view only, view and download. We've got upload permission, alerting for both downloads and uploads, deletion permission, which means I can delete files from this folder. And then we have, and I want to be really clear about this, we have folder administrator permissions. This is a unique role. A lot of times working in the IT world, we hear the word administrator, and giving someone admin rights kind of sets off some panic alarms. So everyone on the call here, this admin permission is unique to this folder. This is essentially a role, I guess you could say, that only pertains to the scope of this folder and its contents. So if you were to make me a folder administrator, that means that I now have the rights to not only add and remove files to and from this folder, so I can delete content that comes with it, but I can also add and remove users to and from this folder. Now, in the grander scheme of things, the way ShareFile's permissions are structured, you may assign me that right for this folder without giving me the global permission to create new users in ShareFile, again, from a global scope. That would mean that while I have control over my little area here, I can work on the project. Maybe I'm a department head, project manager, team leader, etc. I can pick and choose people out of the company address book, including clients, to add and remove to this folder without the ability to actually bring people in that don't already exist within our ShareFile environment. So stacking these permissions along with the rest of ShareFile's security controls in a judicious manner can really give you a lot of control. It accommodates a lot of scenarios. And if you have any questions, I do encourage you to reach out to your customer success engineer because there are plenty of ways to do this to make sure it's perfectly locked down, but still give everyone the flexibility they need to work the way they want to. Also want to point out, with the exception of super users, who again can see everything on your account, no one will get access to any folder unless they are explicitly assigned it. So there is no, oops, I got loaded into ShareFile and ShareFile gave me everything. Um, with that in mind, of course, you want to not grant super user permission to too many people. And you do want to manage your distribution groups and make sure you're not throwing people into groups that have too much permission. But when you bring a new user into the environment, by default, they have nothing until you assign it to them. So you don't have to worry about users peeking through your folder list and seeing things that they shouldn't see. Not even the folders themselves. It just wouldn't be exposed unless you've granted access. So with that in mind, let's keep it rolling, um, and we'll take a look at our automated security measures. So, what are automated security measures? Essentially, as we all know, the landscape of cybersecurity is always changing, and human intervention is not always fast enough. So, we wanted to apply some monitoring practices and policies to ShareFile to the accounts so that you can have a response that's immediate when there is genuinely a threat. So, we'll look at our So for automated threat remediation and automated security measures, let's click into Settings, Admin Settings, Security, and we'll check our security policy. Now, of course, we have things like sign-in policy with password history, complexity, single sign-on requirements. Certainly encourage you to turn on multi-factor authentication for all external users if you do not have that turned on. That is an option, but I strongly recommend it. And looking at our overall security policy here, this is back to the topic at hand. We have our auto remediation. So while this is an area of continued focus and development, the given scenarios thus far are impossible travel, defined by uh, fairly rapid access to ShareFile from multiple countries, to the extent at which it seems unreasonable or impossible even for VPN users, right? Then, everyone has those edge cases where the CEO is taking a trip to Tahiti and we see some strange IP addresses, right? And that's fine, and those can be dealt with. But this is referring to more of an automated attack, just recurring access, where it's beyond an edge case. The next scenario we provide for is high download activity. So let's say your average user signs into ShareFile, pokes through some files, and downloads a few files per day, maybe anywhere from 20 on up in a normal week, but nothing in the thousands, right? And suddenly that user has a huge spike in the volume that they're downloading. That is disconcerting, and so that will throw up a flag. If you have this turned on, we will remediate that automatically by notifying you as an admin and potentially locking the user out. And of course, while we in our first scenario with the impossible traveler, we were talking about access from multiple geographic regions, multiple countries. We also have access from a high number of IPs, which is a huge red flag in terms of compromised credentials. Now, maybe multiple bad actors have a set of leaked credentials and are logging in with what appear to be valid credentials, but from a large number of IP addresses. Doesn't seem legitimate. Let's sound the alarm and take care of that for you. If you feel that any of these are something you want to disable, you can certainly turn them off, acknowledging the action you're taking and clicking save. Uh, I recommend you keep them on, but you do have control over that. And then looking at what happens when these are related, let's come down to the security alert settings, still under our security subheading in admin settings. So we've overhauled this in the past year or so here. So first and foremost, we have always, with these types of alerts, notified an administrator. But sometimes it makes sense to notify other individuals. So, for instance, when a user is showing a login from a different country, do you want to notify the user? If they're an employee and you want them to get a notice that someone has signed in under their name from a different country, you would simply select here. If you want that same communication to carry over to a client, so this is in the event that a client's password and name were to be leaked and they've got someone trying to impersonate them, sure, we want to notify the admin. Do we want to notify the client? You have the flexibility to manage that separately, right? So the user in question here can be treated differently depending on whether they're an employee or a client. Same thing for these different scenarios, a different city with a different device than their usual pattern of behavior, multiple failed sign-in attempts, that's a red flag, or when a suspicious file is uploaded to a folder. We can also, instead of just notifying the account owner as the main administrator on the account, we can add alternate security contacts, up to 2 individual users or 2 distribution groups to receive the alerts. So in this case, I've got a distribution group for my IT team. I'm going to set them up as an alternate security contact so that anyone who would, or any alert that would be passed to me, let's say I'm on vacation, or maybe I just, while I am the account owner for ShareFile. Maybe I'm not in there every day and I've delegated some of those responsibilities to other members on my team. I want to make sure that the communication is not being bottlenecked by hitting my inbox. Let's get this out to everyone that would need to respond to it. All right, so there we go. A couple more items here while we round out the security picture. Let's look at our reporting tools. These are great. And we've also renamed this heading. So if you've seen this in the past, if you've been with us for a while, this used to say account and company info. We have now bubbled that reporting label right up to the top because that's where you go for reporting. So we need that. Let's click on reporting here. And we will see a history of recently run reports. So if we just need to refer back to something that we came in here and generated last week, easy enough. We can see it in the last few here. Also note that if there are any reports that, let's say, are empty, like my usage report right here, I will see a flag. The report ran successfully, but it contains no data. Nothing to download. Okay. And so what do these look like? So we have recent reports and recurring reports. By and large, they're the same report types, and the difference is, of course, whether you want them to run automatically at a set interval or just run ad hoc when you choose to investigate some data. So let's take a look at creating a report. Now, we are going to bounce back and forth just for a moment here because the number one most requested type of report is a usage report. So let's take a look at what that entails. The usage report can be run for up to 90 days at one time. Now, our customer success team gets a lot of questions about this. We can pull 90 days at one time. It does not mean that your history is limited to 90 days. You can go all the way back to the beginning of your account. It just has to be in 90-day increments. Some of these, we've got thousands and thousands of users across the world signing in every single day and pulling multiple files. So you can imagine an account that size, what 90 days worth of activity would look like. And so we have to enforce that limit in order to keep everything running smoothly. However, again, if you need an entire year's worth of data, particularly if you're on a smaller account, that's not so bad. You would just need to run 4 of these with different schedules. And so we can pick our date ranges right here. And if we want something a little more dialed in, we can actually just click on today, yesterday, this week, last month, last 30 days. We can also narrow down what we're looking at based on a few criteria. Do we want to look at everything across the entire account? Are we investigating a given user? I think that John guy is up to something. Or are we looking at a particular folder? Right? So we can select only activity usage within a given folder and whether or not we want to include subfolders. So if you do have a high activity account and you need a way to make this data a little less overwhelming and easier to consume so you can get to the pieces you're really looking for, there are plenty of ways to narrow it down. Not only can we narrow the scope of individuals and locations for the activities and data, but we can also filter out certain types of activities. So if we only care about downloads, we don't need to look at the rest of these. We can just leave the download box checked. If we need to find deletions, right, that's a good one. Where did these files go? Who deleted them? This is how you would find that, and you can uncheck the rest of these to make your report a bit more consumable. Do we want this report to be run on a recurring basis? If so, we click yes. We've got to select our folder. Okay. And so we have our activity type run on a recurring basis. We can output these as an Excel sheet or a comma separated value sheet. And where do we want the report to save? We choose our given folder. Okay. So when we do that, that's all we need to do. If we do not run it on a recurring basis, so again, we covered what's in the usage report, and I mentioned that this is the most popular type of report, the most frequently requested and discussed. There is one other thing that I want to point out regarding usage and activity logs, and that is that you can view this in a different format from a folder itself. So in this case, I've browsed to my Acme construction folder. If I click the 3-dot menu in the top here, I've got view activity log as an option, and I can filter my date ranges, include subfolders or not, filter out particular activity types, and just view this information right here. I can also export it to Excel. So If you are looking just for usage information and you don't have a need to make it a recurring report that you drop into a given folder, maybe even one that notifies you when the report's ready, that's fine. If you just need to investigate, this is a way to click through it, get your folder history and activity, and get the information quickly. And of course, we are subject to the same constraints up to 3 months or 90 days at a time, and we can see what's going on here. Uh, that being said, that is the one exception for ShareFile's reporting tool. A couple of different ways to get that info. Let's take a look at the other types of reports. So an access report gives you a summary of which individuals have permission into which folders across the account. And you can narrow that by a user or by a given folder, so you don't have to look at the entire account all at once. Once you have the basics down there for an access report, and I will also say that there are some of our customers that are required to produce that report once yearly to meet certain compliance standards. So, not a bad thing to have in your tool bag. Once you have that established, you can periodically produce an access change report. If your account has a lot of data, this is going to be a much more consumable way to get this information. An access report every single time might be pretty large if you've got a lot of folders and subfolders. So getting that out of the way once and then just showing what's changed since the last date a report was run can be a bit more streamlined in the future. Some of these are much more rare to come across in the wild. Storage detail and storage summary. These can be really helpful in a pinch, but they don't arise, thankfully, too often. This will actually give you a detail of all of the files and their sizes in your account. And a storage summary will show you zone by zone, whether that's in our various cloud zones that we offer for storage, or even your on premises zones where you have to watch how much storage you have allocated to your own servers. Um, Either of those scenarios, we would output on a report that you have filtered across the entire account or for a given user so that you can see who's using how much storage and where it lives. As far as other activities, like John had talked about sending out shares and setting security defaults for request links as well. We can get a read on what's going on with either of those via the share and request reports, and a detailed report showing all the users on your account. This includes employees and clients. So if you need to know who all is on the account, you get an Excel sheet that you can filter by email address, any number of text filters, sort by clients or employees, as ShareFile phrases them. Is there a really clean way to get a read on everyone that's within the company address book and whatnot? Bandwidth detail and bandwidth summary, similar to storage detail and storage summary. This will show you bandwidth consumption in a couple of different ways. This one, out of all of them, I would say is probably more rare. Generally, bandwidth is not as much of a concern, but there are certain scenarios where that may be relevant. So it's nice to know it's there. And reviewing your account's outgoing messages, the messaging report, helpful for encrypted email and sending via ShareFile directly to a recipient when you have one of those share links like John showed us earlier. All right, so one last stop on our journey here, and that is going to be user profiles. So we've looked at assigning permissions, we've looked at how to automatically mitigate potentially malicious activity, how we alert administrators. We've looked at more deep investigative reporting across our account, as well as activity logging at the folder level. So now let's go down to the user level and see, now that we understand the reports and the full picture of things, what we can do from a people perspective. So this can be for clients as well as employees. And let's browse our employees from our People tab. So here we'll see all of the registered employees within our company. Again, we could click over to Client Contacts and only be looking at external contacts. And let's pick on my friend John here and see what he's got going on. So when we click into his user profile, we will see all his basic information. And if we have any concerns or any questions about what level of permissions he has in ShareFile globally, we can expand his employee user settings for user access and see that in this case, he's got all of them. He can do everything. If we want to know out of all of our storage zones on our account, which ones is he allowed to use or is he assigned to as a default, all of his files go into ShareFile US East by default. Um, this is the default storage zone for every ShareFile account, period. If you have a strictly customer hosted storage account, initially this would be available to you at your account's inception until you have a storage zone configured on your own. And then that would show here under private cloud. If you need additional geographic regions because you have teams or offices working in different regions and you want to house the data close to them, please contact your customer success engineer. These are available to you, likely with no additional cost, but I encourage you to ask the question if that would be helpful to you. We have EU zones, the Middle East, the Pacific Northwest, all over the world. And so you can assign folders to one of those locations as well as individuals to one of those locations. So now that we've got a read on where John's files live and what kind of stuff he can do across our account, let's take a look at his activity. And so this is a newer tab here. We've got our basic info, like we saw, and then we've got activity and security alerts. So if anything of John's has thrown up alerts, high download activity, multiple IP addresses, multiple countries, etc., then we would see those here. Thankfully, none of our demo accounts that I can think of have any of that type of activity. But if we do see um, security alerts that trigger one of those auto remediation mechanisms, we'll see alerts that look like this: sign-ins, where they're coming from, the time period, etc., what's going on, trend changes, like a spike in unique IP addresses, and unusual activity, like a spike in download volume. So those are some examples of what that looks like. Most of the time, we find that our users and our customers' users are well behaved, and so all we need to do is actually just click into their folder activity right here. And so just by clicking into John's folder activity, we can see here's his encrypted email. Now, most of the time, your folders will have a nice clean path like this. The encrypted email inbox is a little bit of an outlier. You'll notice some coding and identifiers there. But if you roll your mouse over the folder path, you'll see that it is in shared folders, encrypted email inbox. The rest of this is just an identifier designating that this is John's. And there's his encrypted email message right here, uploaded from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. As far as other folders, we can see Full Metal Brisket deleted from Fort Lauderdale in the client folders, shared folders section. And so that's how we would review folder activity. We can also come in here and disable this user to make it so that while John will still exist in the system and could be reinstated at any time, he will not be able to log in until I enable him again. This is a great idea for users that are on leave, but also an emergency measure too if you know that someone's credentials have been compromised. You can also log them out from any active sessions, reset their two-step verification code, and reset their password. So some nice security measures that you can perform on behalf of someone else in the event that that is needed, in the event of an emergency. That is the overview of ShareFile's security mechanisms.